Anna had always been a kind soul, a person who would go above and beyond to help anyone in need. But that night, her compassion would cost her everything. It was just another evening at the upscale restaurant where she worked, the place buzzing with laughter and the clinking of fine glasses. The wealthy patrons were oblivious to the hard work of people like Anna, who fought every day just to get by. She had been working there for 2 years, dealing with rude customers and a tyrannical boss, but never once had she thought about quitting. However, that night, everything changed. The door swung open, and a man walked in wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans. He didn't demand attention. In fact, he seemed to blend in, but Anna's heart skipped a beat when she realized who it was. Keanu Reeves, the movie star everyone adored. He walked in quietly and sat at a corner table, his presence unnoticed by most. The waitress who approached him hesitated, discomfort evident on her face as she walked away. Moments later, Mr. Daniels, the manager, stormed out from his office, a fake smile plastered on his face. "I'm sorry, sir, but we have a strict reservation-only policy," he said, his voice dripping with insincerity. Anna couldn't stand by any longer. She stepped forward, her voice firm and unwavering. "He's a paying customer, let him stay." But Mr. Daniels' face turned bright red with fury, and with a venomous hiss, he fired her on the spot. "That's it. You're done." For a split second, Anna froze. She had just lost her job, her only source of income, for doing the right thing. She stared at Keanu, who offered her a small, appreciative smile. With a heavy heart, she took off her apron, tossed it on the counter, and walked out into the cold night, feeling like her world had just shattered. Little did she know, her life was about to take a dramatic turn. As Anna walked through the cold, empty streets, her mind raced. Her heart ached as the reality of the night's events hit her. She had just lost her job. Not just any job, but the only job that kept her afloat. The restaurant had been her lifeline for 2 years, a place where she had put in countless hours, endured rude customers, and swallowed the harsh words of an oppressive manager. All of that gone in an instant. She had done nothing wrong except stand up for a stranger, a man who happened to be Keanu Reeves. Anna had always believed in doing the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. She had always been kind-hearted, going out of her way to help others. But she never expected that such kindness would cost her so dearly. The icy wind cut through her, but it was nothing compared to the chill she felt in her chest. She had stood up for someone in need, and now she had nothing left. No job, no security, just the harsh reality of an unforgiving world. The walk back to her tiny apartment felt like a lifetime. Her small, cramped space, barely big enough to call home, was the only place she had left. Rent was due in a week, and she had no savings to cover it. As she reached her front door, she could feel the weight of her decision. She had chosen to do the right thing, but now, with no job and no backup plan, the consequences felt unbearable. She stepped inside, kicking off her shoes and collapsing onto her bed. Staring at the ceiling, her mind swirled with a mix of emotions. Anger, frustration, fear. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had to stay strong, even if it felt like the world was collapsing around her. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend Mia. "Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Anna sighed, her fingers trembling as she typed a reply, her words barely able to convey the depth of her feelings. "I lost my job for trying to help someone. I feel like I did the right thing, but it still sucks." The response came almost instantly. "Wait, you mean Keanu Reeves?" Anna hesitated before replying, unsure of what to say. "Yeah, why?" Mia's reply came with a screenshot attached. A social media post from one of the customers at the restaurant. The caption read, "Waitress fired for helping Keanu Reeves after a rude manager humiliates him. Disgusting." Anna's heart pounded as she scrolled through the comments, each one a wave of support for her. Who fires someone for being kind? This restaurant is done. Boycott them. People were actually standing up for her. She couldn't believe it. But before she could fully process what was happening, her phone rang. The caller ID was unfamiliar. Hesitant, she answered, and a calm, familiar voice responded. "Hi, Anna. This is Keanu." Her heart skipped a beat. Was this real? Was Keanu Reeves actually calling her? Her hands shook as she sat up in disbelief. "Hello?" she stammered, barely able to get the words out. There was a short chuckle on the other end, warm and reassuring. "I just wanted to check in on you," Keanu said. "What happened back there wasn't fair." And his voice quivered as she spoke. "I appreciate that, but I'll be fine. I just never thought standing up for someone would cost me my job." There was a brief silence before Keanu spoke again, and his words sent a chill down her spine. "It won't cost you anything, Anna. In fact, this might be the best thing that ever happened to you." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. It was a screenshot from a major news outlet with the headline, "Waitress Fired for Defending Keanu Reeves. Hollywood Star Speaks Out." The article went on to quote Keanu, "It's not about me, it's about how we treat people. This woman showed kindness and she was punished for it. That's not the world I want to live in." Anna's jaw dropped. She could barely process what was happening. Keanu was publicly standing up for her. His voice was steady and calm as he said, "I just told the truth. You stood up for what was right." The restaurant's social media accounts were flooded with negative reviews, people demanding justice for Anna. Some were even calling for Mr. Daniels, the manager, to be fired. The entire situation had spiraled out of control in a way she never could have imagined. Her heart raced as she stared at her phone, trying to make sense of it all. This wasn't just about her anymore. Keanu had turned her fight into something bigger. He had made her cause his own. And just like that, Anna's life was on the verge of changing in ways she never expected. The next morning, Anna woke up with a feeling of disbelief still hanging over her. She had barely slept the night before, her mind running in 100 different directions as she replayed the events of the previous evening. The phone call from Keanu, the flood of support on social media, and now the news article about her situation going viral. It was almost too much for her to process. How had her life gone from an ordinary waitress struggling to pay her rent to a national headline overnight? How had a simple act of kindness, a moment of standing up for what was right, changed everything so dramatically? Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Keanu. The text was short, but the impact of his words was undeniable. "Pack your bags. Your life is about to change." Anna's stomach dropped. It was a surreal moment. This couldn't be real. A part of her wanted to believe it, to trust that Keanu really meant what he said. But another part of her, the part that had been struggling for so long, feared that this was all a dream she would wake up from in a cold, empty apartment. But before she could overthink it, her phone rang, and it was Keanu again. "Good morning, Anna." His voice was calm but reassuring. "Are you ready for what's next?" She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. I don't know what to expect." Keanu chuckled softly, the warmth of his laugh easing some of her anxiety. "You don't need to worry, just trust me. Everything you've been through, it's all led you to this point. You're stronger than you know." Those words were the lifeline Anna needed. For so long she had felt weak, invisible, like her voice didn't matter in the world. But now, for the first time, someone, Keanu Reeves no less, was telling her that she had the strength to make a real difference. She didn't know where this road would lead, but the thought of stepping away from the dark corner she had been backed into and embracing something bigger was enough to push her forward. By 9 a.m., a sleek black car pulled up in front of her apartment, its polished exterior gleaming in the morning sun. The driver, a well-dressed man with dark sunglasses, stepped out of the vehicle and opened the door for her. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether this was really happening. Was this some sort of elaborate prank? Or was this truly the beginning of something new? But the driver's polite expression and the car's aura of luxury told her this was real. Too real. "Miss Anna," the driver said, his voice steady, "please, have a seat." The car pulled away, and Anna watched the city pass by in a blur, her mind racing with questions. Where was she going? What was Keanu planning? Her heart hammered in her chest, the uncertainty making her palms sweat. But the nervous excitement that bubbled in her chest told her that no matter how wild the journey was about to get, she couldn't back out now. After about 30 minutes of driving, the car came to a stop in front of a massive modern building. The structure was so grand, so towering, that it seemed to touch the sky itself. Anna had never seen anything like it. It looked like a place reserved for the rich, the powerful, people who had the kind of influence that could shape the world. She stepped out of the car and felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. She was out of her league here. A small-town waitress who had only ever dreamed of a better life now stood in the shadow of something far greater than she could have imagined. As she walked into the building, the doors opened automatically, and standing inside was none other than Keanu himself. He smiled, a genuine, reassuring smile that made Anna feel a little less like an outsider. "Ready to change your life?" he asked, his voice calm and confident, but filled with an energy that made Anna feel like anything was possible. I think so," she said, her voice trembling, but filled with determination. Keanu nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "Good, because we have a lot of work to do." They walked through the building, and Anna's senses were overwhelmed. The lobby was beautiful, filled with high ceilings, polished marble floors, and walls lined with incredible works of art. Everything about this place screamed success, influence, and power. Everything Anna had never had, but now she was here, standing at the crossroads of something she never could have dreamed up on her own. They took an elevator to the top floor, where the doors opened to a breathtaking office space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. A group of well-dressed professionals turned to greet her, and their curiosity was palpable. "Anna," Keanu said, motioning toward the group. "Meet the team." She blinked in surprise. "Team? What team?" But before she could ask, Keanu's smile widened. "This is the team that's going to help you make the kind of difference in the world you've always wanted to make." Her heart skipped a beat. What was he talking about? A part of her wanted to run back to her old life where things were predictable, even if that life was nothing more than surviving day to day. But another part, the part that had always dreamed of more, stood tall and took a deep breath. This was it. This was her chance to be something more than just a waitress. Keanu leaned forward, his expression serious. "You didn't just lose your job for doing the right thing, Anna. You lost your job for showing the world what kindness can do. And that's why you're here today. We need people with integrity, people who aren't afraid to do what's right, no matter the cost." For the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she belonged. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She wasn't powerless. She was part of something that could change the world. And it all started with that one moment, that one decision to stand up for someone who needed help. Keanu smiled again, his voice soft but firm. "Welcome to the team, Anna. Let's get to work." As the morning sun filtered through the city's skyline, Anna couldn't shake the gnawing sense of fear that had taken hold of her. The life she had once known, the small familiar apartment, and the job she had worked so hard to maintain seemed so far away now. She had been fired for doing the right thing, for standing up for someone who was treated unjustly. And now she was being thrust into a new world, a world she never could have imagined. But she had made her choice. She was in this, for better or worse. The events of the past 24 hours had felt like a whirlwind, a series of dramatic moments that had shifted her life in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. Keanu Reeves, the man whose face was known worldwide, had turned a simple act of kindness into something that would change her future forever. But with this change came a price. It wasn't just her former boss, Mr. Daniels, who had shown his ugly side. Now Anna realized that she had become part of something much bigger, a battle that had the potential to reach far beyond the confines of a single restaurant. Her phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from Keanu. "I'm on my way," it read, and Anna's stomach tightened. She knew he had something planned, but what? What could someone like him possibly want with a former waitress who had barely been able to pay her rent just days ago? Keanu had been clear with her. This wasn't just about helping him out. It was about standing up for what was right. And yet, the closer Anna got to the truth of what this meant, the more it felt like she was entering a fight she wasn't prepared for. But as she stood there, looking out over the city, she realized that this was her fight too. For the first time, she wasn't just going to sit back and take what life handed her. She was going to make a stand, no matter what it cost her. She had just decided to make her way downstairs when her phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, but there was a firmness to it that sent a chill down her spine. "Anna," Keanu's voice was steady. "We have a problem." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She knew this wasn't just about her, this wasn't just about the restaurant. The sense of unease she had felt earlier was beginning to settle in. This was bigger. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to steady the panic rising in her chest. "I think you've made some enemies," Keanu said, his tone a little darker now. "The people we're up against, those who profit from keeping others down, they're not happy that you stood up for what's right." A shiver ran down Anna's spine. She had known that there would be backlash, but the realization that there were powerful people who could be threatening her for doing the right thing hit her harder than she expected. For the first time, she questioned what she had gotten herself into. This wasn't just about getting her old job back or getting even with Mr. Daniels. This was about standing up against people who had the power to ruin lives, people who had been pulling the strings for far too long. Keanu's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "Listen, I need you to be ready. We're going to take this fight to the people who need to hear it, and when we do, we need to be prepared for the consequences." Anna took a deep breath. She didn't know exactly what this fight would look like, but one thing was certain. She couldn't back down now, not when so many others had already shown their support, when so many had rallied behind her. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about making sure that people like her, people who had always been overlooked, had a voice. The sound of a car pulling up outside her building snapped Anna out of her thoughts. The black vehicle she had grown familiar with was parked in front of her apartment, the driver stepping out and opening the door. There was no turning back now. With a racing heart, Anna grabbed her bag, took one last look around her tiny apartment, and walked out into the world that was rapidly changing around her. The car ride felt different now. It wasn't just the quiet hum of the engine or the luxury of the vehicle. There was a new tension in the air, a weight that hung between them. Anna couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something that would forever alter the course of her life. As they arrived at the sleek, towering building where Keanu had first met her, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and fear in equal measure. This wasn't her world, but it was about to become her battleground. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The people she had met the day before, those professionals who had seemed so distant, were now more than just faces in a room. They were allies in this fight, people who believed in the cause, in the idea that standing up for what's right shouldn't come with a price. But as Anna looked around the conference room, her pulse quickened. There was no denying it. This was real. The stakes had been raised, and it wasn't just her reputation on the line anymore. This was about something far bigger. Keanu was already at the head of the table, his expression as calm as ever, but Anna could see the determination in his eyes. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a strategy meeting. He turned to her with a smile that conveyed both reassurance and a quiet intensity. "I knew this would be tough," he said, "but now we're playing for keeps. This is bigger than any one person, but with you here we have a chance to do something that will make a difference." Anna felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just about her being a victim of a system that had let her down. This was about taking down a system that thrived on injustice, on keeping people like her powerless. She wasn't just in this for herself anymore. She was in it for everyone who had been overlooked, mistreated, or silenced. And as the room filled with people who shared the same vision, Anna realized that, for the first time in her life, she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for something that mattered. Fighting for the kind of world where people like her could stand up and be heard, no matter who they were, no matter where they came from. And that fight was worth everything. The next morning, Anna woke up to the chaos that had quickly become her new reality. The phone in her hand buzzed with notifications, and as she scrolled through them, the full weight of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours slammed into her. The restaurant she had worked at for 2 years was being flooded with negative reviews, and her story, the story of how she had been fired for standing up for Keanu Reeves, was spreading like wildfire across social media. She could hardly believe the response. People were rallying behind her, sharing their own stories of workplace injustice and demanding that her former manager be held accountable. This wasn't just a local issue anymore. It was a national conversation about right and wrong. And yet, amidst all the support, Anna felt a growing unease. The fight had only just begun, and she had no idea what would come next. Keanu had told her that the people she was up against were powerful, and the phone call from her former manager the night before only confirmed that. Someone didn't want her to be a part of this fight. They wanted her to stay silent, to go back to her life of being unseen, unheard, and unimportant. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Not now. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was the driver again, the same well-dressed man who had picked her up the day before. He didn't say much as he opened the door for her, but there was something about the way he moved, effortless, confident, that made Anna feel like she was stepping into a world she didn't quite belong to. The car ride to the building was quieter this time, the tension palpable in the air. The streets outside the car window blurred past, but Anna's mind was a whirl of confusion, fear, and determination. What had she gotten herself into? She had stood up for someone, and now she was part of something much bigger, something that felt as though it was teetering on the edge of something dangerous. As the car pulled up to the towering building once more, Anna felt her heart race. She was entering a battlefield, and the stakes had never been higher. The sleek glass structure loomed in front of her like a fortress, a symbol of power and influence. Anna wasn't naive. She knew that with the support of Keanu and his team came immense pressure, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. But she didn't have a choice anymore. She had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. She walked through the grand entrance of the building and into the elevator. The same team from the day before was waiting for her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Keanu was already there waiting for her with a smile that seemed to offer both reassurance and a reminder of what was at stake. The room was buzzing with quiet conversation, but when Anna walked in, everything fell silent. They were waiting for her to take her seat, to make her decision. Keanu looked at her, his gaze steady. "This is bigger than anything you've ever faced, Anna. But I need you to understand something. This is your moment. You didn't just stand up for a celebrity. You stood up for what's right, for people who are too afraid to speak out. And because of that, you're part of something that can change the world." His words rang in Anna's ears. She had never been more scared in her life, but at the same time, she had never felt more alive. She had been walking through life feeling invisible, her voice drowned out by the noise of the world. But now, she was here. She had something to fight for. She had a purpose. As the meeting began, Anna listened intently as Keanu and his team laid out their plans. This wasn't just about her. It was about taking on an entire system of corruption, of corporate greed, of people who thought they could control others with their power. They were going after those who silenced workers, who fired them for standing up, who kept people in fear. They were going after people who thought they could break people like Anna, but they didn't know her. They didn't know what she was capable of. As the team spoke about their next moves, about how they were going to expose the injustices that ran rampant in the industry, Anna realized something that hit her like a freight train. This wasn't just a fight for her own justice. This was a fight for everyone who had ever been wronged, for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. She wasn't alone anymore. The power of the people who had supported her, the strength of the team Keanu had assembled, was something she couldn't ignore. But just as she began to feel a sense of purpose, her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a message of support. It wasn't a call from Keanu checking in. It was a cold, ominous voice. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into," the voice said, its tone dripping with malice. "You've made a powerful enemy, and you will regret this. You should have stayed in your place." Anna's blood ran cold. She knew who it was. It was the same voice she had heard before, the voice of someone who was determined to crush her spirit. But now, instead of fear, a wave of anger swept through her. She wasn't the scared waitress anymore. She was part of something bigger, and no matter how powerful her enemies were, she wasn't backing down. As the voice on the other end of the line hung up, Keanu looked at Anna with a knowing expression. He wasn't surprised by the call. This was the fight they had prepared for. "They're trying to intimidate you," Keanu said quietly. "But don't let them. This is what happens when you stand up. They'll try to scare you, but you have the strength to stand your ground." Anna took a deep breath, her hands trembling but her resolve solid. She looked around the room at the faces of those who had gathered to fight beside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about showing the world that one person's courage could spark a movement. It was time to make her enemies realize that the truth had the power to tear down their walls, no matter how high they built them. This was the moment. Anna wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person who had been silenced, for every person who had been mistreated. And she wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever.